Amateur Radio News and Notes for Friday, June 19th, 2026. I'm Ed Kadick, November 2, Echo Charlie. In the log this week, we talk about ARRL Kids Day happening on the 20th. Also, CHU Canada is shutting down on the 22nd. We'll have an event spotlight for the World Cup special event stations. Also, a contest spotlight for the Stu Perry Top Band Challenge. Also talk about the NOAA Solar One satellite that's now operational. Ameritron and Mirage brands have been acquired by ITU. We'll also remind you that the ARRL Field Day is happening next weekend. Also talk about some MVARC Nets on the air, see what's happening with DX, get a solar activity update, talk about some upcoming contests, and take a look at interesting online radio content. As always, links to all reference content can be found in the show notes or at our Substack at mvarc.substack.com. This Saturday brings the summer edition of ARRL Kids Day to the air. Kids Day happens twice a year to give young people a chance to get on the air and get excited about amateur radio in the hopes that they pursue their own licenses. It also gives current amateurs a chance to share their station with kids and share their love of the hobby with them. Kids Day starts at 1800 UTC on Saturday. That's 2 p.m. Eastern Time on Saturday. It ends at 2359 UTC at 7:59 p.m. Eastern Time on Saturday. This isn't a contest, so operators can operate as much or as little as they'd like. The suggested exchange is name, age, location, and favorite color. You can work the same station multiple times if the operator has changed. The ARRL encourages ops to call CQ Kids Day to draw attention. The ARRL Kids Day site has a series of frequencies they suggest for centers of operation and encourage you to send your stories and photos as well. There's a downloadable certificate you can print and give to young operators who get on the air. This promises to be a fun event to get kids on the air and a great opportunity to work those kids and get them excited about amateur radio. For more information and resources, visit arrl.org/kids-day. Good luck.
CHU Canada. Coordinated Universal Time. 1 hour, 54 minutes. 1 heure, 54 minutes.
As we covered a couple weeks ago, CHU Canada, the time signal station that broadcasts time signals on 3.330 megahertz, 7.850 megahertz, and 14.670 megahertz, is scheduled to shut down on June 22nd. CHU's signal has been easily heard in the United States and around the world with its broadcasts of time announcement via voice and also by digital time codes. It is broadcast in upper sideband with a carrier reinserted to allow it to be received on a single sideband radio using 3 atomic clocks located at the transmitter site, and signals are highly accurate. In addition to providing the time, the signals were used by many to gauge ionospheric propagation conditions, and recently HAMSI, an organization engaged in citizen science using amateur radio, released a statement on how they've been actively using the signals from CHU to further their research, formally asking the Canadian National Research Council, or NRC, which operates CHU, to reverse their decision to close the station. As we go to press, there is no indication that the decision will be reversed. The decision to end CHU broadcast follows the closing of Canada's Weather Radio Network on March 16th earlier this year. Tune your radio to CHU for one last time this weekend before it falls silent. The YouTube channel Official SWL channel reports that their sources indicate the final transmission may be at 10 to 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time on Monday, June 22nd, with 10:10 a.m. Eastern Time being the expected end of transmission. More information about CHU can be found at a link in the show notes.
CHU Canada, temps universel coordonné, 1 heure, 55 minutes.
1 hour, 55 minutes.
A special event station to commemorate the 2026 World Soccer Tournament is currently underway, with operators on the air in the United States, Canada, and Mexico. There are special stations for each of the event venues, including Atlanta, Boston, Dallas, Houston, Kansas City, Los Angeles, Miami, New York, and New Jersey, Philadelphia, San Francisco, Seattle, Toronto, Vancouver, Guadalajara, Mexico City, Monterrey, and also a bonus station. In the U.S., there are several 1x1 calls: W4C, W1C, W5C, K0C, W6C, K4C, W2C, WM3PEN, W6S, W7C, and also WC5WC. In Canada, stations include VC3F and VB7F. And in Mexico, stations include 4 Alpha 1 Golf Delta Lima, 4 Alpha 1 Charlie Mike X-Ray, and 4 Alpha 1 Mike Tango Yankee. Operators will be working VHF, UHF, and HF on analog and digital, and there will be 16 QSL cards to collect. They're looking for volunteers, and the event continues until July 19th, 2026. For more information on the event and how to participate, visit wc2026ses.org. Good luck. This Saturday, June 20th, brings the June edition of the Stu Perry Top Band Challenge. The challenge starts at 1500 UTC, that's 11 a.m. Eastern Time on Saturday, and lasts for 24 hours. Ops may only work a total of 14 hours total, and off times must be at least 30 minutes in length. The contest is on the top band, or the 160-meter band, on CW only, and has the feature that the point value of each QSO is dependent on the distance between the two stations. Categories of operation include single and multi-operator, at high, up to legal limits, low, up to 100 watts, and QRP, up to 5-watt levels. The exchange is a 4-digit Maidenhead grid square locator. In my case, I'm Virginia, I'm FM 18, and an RST is optional. QSO points are based upon the distance between the centers of the two grid squares. The base points are 1 with an additional point for every 500 kilometers in distance. So, a QSO with 1,750 kilometers of distance would count for 4 QSO points. You may not count long path distances for points. If you work a low power station, you're given a multiplier of 2, and if you work a QRP station, you get a multiplier of 4. This is calculated based upon received logs and done automatically during log checking processes. External assistance is not permitted. This includes using spotting networks or even telling other ops that another station is on another frequency at the end of the QSO. Use of the RBN or skimmers is also not allowed. If you're using a remote receiver to produce QRN, it must be within 100 kilometers of your transmitter site. Look at Rule 6 in the rules as it gives specific advice about what is and what is not permitted. Scores are QSO points multiplied by 1.5 for low power stations and 3 for QRP stations. Logs must be submitted within 14 days of the contest using their log upload tool online. Full rules and links to resources can be found at kkn.net/stew. Good luck. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA, announced that the space weather observations at L1 to Advanced Readiness 1 observatory satellite, also known as Solar 1, officially entered operational service on June 10, 2026. According to NOAA, Solar 1 is the first U.S. satellite designed exclusively for continuous operational space weather observations. It will provide improved observations around the clock of the sun to ensure preparedness for solar storms. Solar 1 was formerly known as Space Weather Follow-On Lagrange 1, SFO-L1, and launched on September 24, 2025. After launch, it traveled nearly 1 million miles to the Sun-Earth Lagrange Point 1, or L1, where it is now parked to continuously monitor solar wind and observe coronal mass ejections, or CMEs, emitted from our sun. The L1 Lagrange point is the point in space between Earth and the sun where gravitational forces are equal and provides an unobstructed view of the sun. Before being deemed operational, it went through 8 months of testing to check its instruments and primary systems. According to NOAA, Solar 1 is, quote, a cornerstone of the nation's space weather early warning system, providing the observations needed to issue timely watches, warnings, alerts, and decision support before solar storms impact critical infrastructure and missions. It'll allow for CME imagery to be sent to Earth within 30 minutes of being captured in space, which is significantly faster than the 8 hours existing observatories can provide. Additionally, NOAA reports that data from Solar 1's solar wind plasma sensor, superthermal ion sensor, and magnetometer will be available within 5 minutes. Solar 1 data will be available to the public in real time via the SWPC website and archived in the NESDIS Space Weather Portal. The full NOAA press release can be found at a link in the show notes. The Linton News reports that ITU Corporation, based in Linton, Indiana, added 2 more MFJ brands to their portfolio earlier this month: Ameritron and Mirage amplifiers. This is in addition to the high-gain and Cushcraft brands they acquired earlier this year. Manufacturing operations for the brands are being relocated from Starkville, Mississippi to ITU Corporation's facility in Indiana. Full production is expected to begin by the end of this year. This is welcome news for the amateur radio community, as Ameritron and Mirage amplifiers and associated products were very popular before they ceased production as MFJ stopped manufacturing. For more information, visit a link in the show notes. We are just 1 week away from amateur radio's biggest event, ARRL Field Day, which happens June 27th to 28th this year. Field Day is described as amateur radio's open house, where amateurs go out into the field to practice emergency preparedness and test their mettle in a fun operating event over the course of the weekend. We'll have expanded coverage next week, but now is a good time to start planning for your operations if you'd like to participate. Many clubs, including the Mount Vernon Amateur Radio Club, will be operating Field Day this year, and welcome both amateur radio operators and the public to see amateur radio in action. The ARRL has a Field Day locator, which can help you find a club near you that you can visit in the field and say hello, and potentially even get on the air. Check out the arrl.org/field-day for rules and details about Field Day, and mark your calendars to join in the fun in the field or from home this year. Additionally, the Long Island CW Club has free courses available on Zoom to help you learn the ins and outs of operating Field Day and improve your CW for this event. More information about those classes can be found at longislandcwclub.org/2026 Field Day. Good luck. And now let's take a look at some MVARC Nets on the air. We have our 2-meter FM net that happens on Tuesdays at 7 p.m. on the repeater. That is immediately followed by our 2-meter digital net on Yaesu System Fusion C4 FM on the same frequency. Then on the weekends, we've got the MVARC Slow Speed CW Roundtable Saturday and Sunday at 7:30 a.m. on 3.565 megahertz CW. And that is followed by the MVARC Cherry Tree Net on Saturday and Sunday at 8:30 a.m. on 3.920 megahertz lower sideband, where we always have a great conversation, and you're always welcome to join us. Now let's take a look at what is happening with DX. There will be a lot of DX on the air this week. Stations on the air include French Polynesia, St. Martin, Cameroon, Cape Verde Island, Curacao, British Virgin Islands, Madagascar, Palau, Sardinia, Armenia, and Easter Island. A calendar of DX expeditions can be found at NG3K's announced DX operations list at ng3k.com. And now it's time for a solar activity update. As we go to press, the solar flux index was 111, and the estimated sunspot number was 50, with 3 numbered sunspot regions visible from Earth. Over the last week, the SFI has decreased. Solar activity has been at low levels in the last 24 hours. The geomagnetic field has been at quiet levels in the last 24 hours, and the KP index reached 3 yesterday. The solar wind peaked at 473 kilometers a second. Solar activity is predicted to be at low levels with a slight chance of M-class flares today through Sunday. The geomagnetic field is forecast to be at quiet levels today and Saturday, and at quiet to unsettled levels on Sunday. The chance of solar radiation storms at the S1 or greater level is at 1% today through Sunday. R1 to R2 radio blackouts are unlikely, with a predicted probability of 15% today through Sunday. R3 or greater blackouts are unlikely, with a 1% chance predicted today through Sunday. It remains a fantastic time for amateurs to get on the air and work the world. Good sources of real-time solar information include spaceweatherlive.com and solarham.com. A good overview of conditions can be found at dx.qsl.net/propagation. To see delayer absorption data and associated radio blackouts, visit the NOAA DRAP page. And to see real-time maximum useful frequency, or MUF, and critical frequency, or FOF2 information from RadioSonde data, visit prop.kc2g.com. And now let's take a look at some upcoming contests this weekend. Brings the Stu Perry Top Band Contest and ARRL Kids Day that we spotlighted earlier, as well as the All Asian DX Contest on CW, the Smirk Contest, the Feld Hell Sprint, the Pajager and Boger DX Contest, the SKCC QSO Party, the IARU Region 1 50 MHz Contest, the LZ International 6-meter Contest, the West Virginia QSO Party, the WAB 50 megahertz phone contest, and the Run for the Bacon QRP contest. As always, the K1USN SSTs, the MSTs, and the CWTs will also be on the air. The full contest calendar with events and exchanges can be found at contestcalendar.com. And now let's wrap things up with some interesting online radio content. As always, everything we're about to talk about here is linked in the show notes and also on our Substack at mvarc.substack.com. The official SWL channel reports on the end of CHU Canada. The Smokin' Ape talks about low-band DX. Josh KI6NAZ talks about a citation from his municipality about his amateur radio antennas and his intent to challenge it using PRB1. Walt K4OGO goes vintage radio hunting at local antique stores. Bobby W6IWN and Chuck KK6USY operate ARRL VHF from a mountaintop fire lookout. Gabe KL1FI tests out the Nano Far-Field Portable Antenna Lab. Chuck KK6USY takes a look at the Yaesu FT80 ATU. Ben VE6 SFX uses a safety pin to make a frequency-agile antenna with RSE line. Michael KB9 VBR makes a bushcraft dipole using wire and a Swiss Army knife. Mike K8MRD shows some of his portable radio go kits. Kevin W1DED talks to some of the young ops going to South Georgia for the VP0 SGD expedition. Walt K4OGO builds a simple quarter-wave antenna for DX on the beach. Mike K8RD shows Jonathan KM4CFT's 3D printed solution to mounting 2 microphones while mobile. Tom Scott visits the Jodrell Bank Radio Telescope. D KO4BTM and the Queens of the Mountains do soda with Ormu the cat. George VK2 AOE shows off his 40-meter QRP beast build. Thomas K4SWL does a post-hamvention activation with friends and tries the MCHF QRP radio. Forrest KI7QCF does a 15-mile ride to a soda first activation. And Craig KM6LYW talks about antennas and their trade-offs. Well, that is it for this week. I've been Ed, November 2, Echo Charlie. Thanks, as always, for joining us. We hope you have a great week ahead. Best 73. And we look forward to seeing you next week.